blog Heart's Content Farmhouse, and today we're going to make apple cider donuts. So this recipe for apple cider donuts is real donuts. This is a yeasted dough that takes time to rise twice, and then they are deep fried, they are not baked. A lot of recipes that you see online are for baked apple cider donuts, which are basically just a muffin batter baked in a special donut pan. That's not what we're doing. We're doing old-fashioned real apple cider donuts. A couple of things you might not have on hand. The first one is instant yeast. Second thing that you might not have is boiled cider. This is just a concentrated form of apple cider that you can get either online or from King Arthur Flour. And it's apple cider that has been boiled until it's about twice as thick and half of the water has been reduced off. What's really great about it is it lasts over a year, so you can just have it in your fridge, and then whenever you want to make a fall recipe like this, you don't have to rush out and get refrigerated apple cider, which is something a lot of people don't keep on hand all the time. So I always have this and I use it a lot. If you don't want to get the boiled cider or you can't find it, you can make your own just by boiling cider on the stovetop until it thickens to it. It's not going to really be a syrup, but it's going to be thickened and it's going to reduce by half. The reason that I'm using boiled cider instead of regular cider is because the flavor is more concentrated. So I can keep milk as my main liquid, which keeps the dough tender, and then I can add in lots of flavor through the boiled cider instead of having to remove some of the milk, put more cider, and then have a tougher donut. Does that make sense? So this recipe, if you're familiar with bread baking, the whole process is going to seem really familiar to you. You mix up your dough, you knead it, you let it do a bulk rise, you shape, you let it rise again, and then you deep fry. So really the only difference is you're deep frying instead of baking. So our first step is just to mix and knead our ingredients. You really don't want to do this by hand. It's really wet and sticky. And not only is it going to be messy, but it's going to feel so sticky in your hands that you are going to be tempted to add more flour, and that is going to give you a denser and tougher donut, and you don't want that. You want to keep things as light as possible. So either a stand mixer with your dough hook or your bread machine is fine. I don't add the ingredients in any special order. I just dump everything in and start mixing. So once the dough has been kneaded, you need to do your first rise. If you plan ahead, the best thing to do is to make this dough the night before and let it rise overnight in your refrigerator. That's because if you want donuts for breakfast, this is a long process. So you'd have to wake up at like 4 in the morning and get it started. So if you make the dough the night before, you are more than halfway there when you wake up in the morning. Now, if you haven't done that and you can't do that overnight refrigerator rise, just do it at warm room temperature for an hour, just like any other yeast dough. Make sure you flour your surface really well for these next steps because it's a wet, sticky dough. So you dump it onto your floured surface, roll it out with a rolling pin, and flour your rolling pin too because it is so sticky, and you roll it out to 1 inch thick. I always actually measure this with a ruler because it's thicker than, like, eyeballing it, it seems like it's too thick, but you want it thick. If you roll it too flat, your donuts are going to be flat. You don't want that. So after you roll it, you cut out the donuts. Don't shape them by hand by like making them into an O, because what you want is that sharp cut, and that means that it's going to rise easier, and when it hits the hot oil, it's going to puff up more. If you shape it by hand, or if you use too dull of a cutter, you're like pinching down the edges and you're sealing everything, and then it has to fight against that when it rises. So you cut them out with a sharp cutter. I used just a 2 1/4 inch round and then a 1 1/4 inch round inside that to get the donut shape. They also make a donut cutter where it's just a 1 punch and you sort of pop it out and you have a donut. Either one is fine. It doesn't make a difference. Just the donut cutter is one last step. After they're cut out, put them on parchment paper or wax paper, because you're spending all this energy trying to get them to be light and fluffy. And when it comes time to pick them up and deep fry them, if you can't get them off the paper, if you're handling them too much and squishing them, you're going to ruin the shape and you will just wasted all of this effort to try to get them fluffy. So make sure they're on parchment paper or wax paper, something where you can really easily slide them off, or even you can cut your parchment paper into squares, pick up a square, and then use that to tip it into the oil so you're not really touching them at all. The second rise is really important. You can't rush it. It takes at least an hour for them to puff back up and get puffy. And you want to sort of eyeball this. They will, when they hit the oil, they are going to rise even more. So if you look at them and you think, geez, these don't really look as fluffy as donuts, that's okay. But you still should have seen a noticeable difference in puffiness. They will about double in size. If you're not seeing that, just give them more time. If you rush it, you're gonna have dense donuts. So towards the end of this second rise, we start preheating our oil. A range of temperatures are going to work for this. I do around 340, I do 1.5 minutes per side. You can go all the way down to 325 and do 2 minutes per side, or all the way up to 375 and do 1 minute per side. It's just personal preference. So you can always halfway through your batch, if you feel like, I wish these were getting browned a little faster, turn up your temperature and adjust it. Now when you're preparing your oil, you need a lot. You need 3 to 4 inches of oil, and you need to use a thermometer to make sure the temperature is right. They need to be swimming and floating around in the oil. You're not pan frying, you're deep frying, and they really need that room to float or they're not gonna cook properly. If you have a deep fryer, this is a perfect use for it. That's what I use. If you don't have one, you can still do it. You just need a lot of oil. I use peanut oil, vegetable oil will work too. Once you have cooked them, depending on your oil temperature, you want to drain them and then immediately either shake them in cinnamon sugar, or you can also do a glaze. If you have that boiled cider, just mix it with powdered sugar, maybe a splash of milk to thin it out. Make sure it's thick but still sort of pourable, and just dip your donuts in. If you want a printable version of this recipe, I'm going to link my blog post in the description below. Just click over there and you'll be able to print it. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you give this recipe a try and that you're not intimidated by making real deep fried donuts. It is not hard. It's just a little bit messy and a little bit more work, but it really isn't hard. So have a really good fall, and thank you for watching.